Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've been driving trucks for 11 years now, down every kind of haul you can imagine. Flatbeds, dry vans, tankers. But after what happened on I-80 that winter, I won't touch a reefer trailer again, not for any amount of money. It was late November. I'd just picked up what should have been an easy run out of Omaha, a refrigerated trailer heading to Casper, Wyoming. The paperwork said it was empty pallets being returned to a warehouse. Simple enough. The kind of job that pays decent because nobody else wants to make the drive in winter. I hooked up around 11 at night. The temperature was already dropping fast. Forecast said it'd hit 5 below by morning. The reefer unit kicked on as soon as I plugged it in, that familiar diesel roar and mechanical hum. After 11 years, you get used to it. It becomes white noise. I pulled out of the depot and merged onto I-80 West. The highway stretched out ahead of me, empty and dark. Just my headlights cutting through the blackness. The plains in winter are something else. Endless, nothing in every direction. No lights, no buildings. Just frozen farmland and the occasional overpass. The cab was warm. I had the heat cranked and classic rock playing low on the radio. My coffee was still hot in the cup holder. Everything felt normal, routine. I should have been exhausted. I'd driven 6 hours earlier that day to get to Omaha, but I wanted to push through. Make the delivery by morning, collect my money, head home. That's how you make a living in this business. You push when you're tired. You drive when everyone else is sleeping. The reefer unit droned behind me. Steady, constant, like a heartbeat. Around 2 in the morning, I pulled into a rest stop just past Lincoln. Needed to check my tires. The cold does weird things to air pressure. The place was deserted. Just one other truck parked way at the far end, lights off, driver probably sleeping. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out into the cold. The wind hit me like a slap. My breath came out in clouds. I could feel the temperature dropping with every passing minute. I walked along the passenger side, checking the tires. Everything looked good. Then I moved toward the back of the trailer. That's when I heard it. Over the hum of the reefer unit, a sound that shouldn't have been there, a scraping, metal on metal, then silence. I stopped walking, listened, nothing, just the reefer unit running, the wind, the distant hum of the highway. I told myself it was ice. The unit does that sometimes. Ice builds up inside, shifts around, makes noise. I got back in the cab and pulled out. But now I was listening. Every few miles, and as in the quiet moments between songs on the radio, I'd strain to hear, waiting for that sound again. And I started to wonder, why would empty pallets need refrigeration? I'd hauled empty equipment before. They don't usually run the reefer unit for that. I pushed the thought away. Not my business. I haul what I'm told to haul. An hour later, I was rolling through Lexington. A small town, barely more than a few lights along the highway. I stopped at a red light, even though there wasn't another car in sight. That's when I heard it clearly. Thump, thump, thump. Rhythmic, deliberate. Coming from inside the trailer. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. My cargo manifest said, empty pallets. Nothing that should be moving, nothing that should be making noise. The light turned green. I drove. I told myself to stop, to pull over, to open the doors and check, but it was freezing. Then I was on a schedule, and some part of me, the part that's been doing this job long enough to know when something's wrong, didn't want to see what was back there. So I kept driving, and the sounds kept coming. Scratching now, like fingernails dragging against the metal interior walls. Slow, desperate. I turned the radio up. drowned it out with classic rock and talk shows and anything that would fill the silence, but in those brief moments between stations, between songs, I could still hear it. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I thought about calling the company, but what would I say? I think there's something alive in my trailer. They'd think I was losing it, tell me to deliver the load and stop wasting time. The miles crawled by. The scratching continued. Sometimes it would stop for 10, 15 minutes. I'd start to relax. Then it would start again, and my stomach would drop. By the time I crossed into Wyoming, the sun still wasn't up. The sky was just starting to lighten at the edges, that pale, sickly gray that comes before dawn in winter. I pulled into a truck stop outside Cheyenne. 5 in the morning. The lot was mostly empty. Just 2 other rigs parked near the building, their engines idling. The thumping had stopped. I sat in my cab for a long time. Engine running, heat blasting, trying to decide what to do. Finally, I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out into the cold. My breath hung in the air. The parking lot lights flickered above me. Everything was silent except for the hum of the reefer unit. I walked to the back of the trailer. My hands were shaking. From the cold, I told myself. Just the cold. I unlocked the doors. The metal was freezing under my fingers. I pulled them open. The interior was dark. Frost covered everything. The walls, the floor, the ceiling. The reefer unit was set to 15 degrees. Cold enough to preserve food. Cold enough to kill. I shined my flashlight inside. Empty pallets, exactly like the manifest said, stacked neatly along the walls. Nothing else. I exhaled. Relief flooding through me. I was losing it. The sounds were just the unit, just ice, just... Then I saw them. In the corner, scraped into the frost on the wall, handprints, sliding down, like someone had pressed their palms against the metal and dragged them down, down, down. My light swept the floor. Wet footprints, bare feet, leading from the front of the trailer, where someone would have been hidden when I picked up the load, all the way to the doors, to where I was standing. The footprints were still wet, still glistening in the beam of my flashlight, but there was no one there. I backed away, slammed the doors shut. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I got back in my cab, called the company with shaking hands. The dispatcher told me to deliver it. Said I was imagining things. Said not to involve the authorities. It would cause delays, paperwork, complications. I told him to go to hell. I unhooked the trailer right there in that parking lot, left it sitting by the fuel pumps, drove away with just my cab. 3 days later, I ran into another driver at a rest stop in Iowa. We got to talking. I mentioned the incident. His face went pale. He told me that same trailer, same number on the side, had been flagged by Border Patrol 6 months earlier. They'd found evidence of human trafficking, blankets, food wrappers, scratch marks on the interior walls, but no bodies, no proof. So they let it go back into rotation. I never took another reefer load. I don't care how much they pay, because I still think about those handprints, about how cold it was inside that trailer. 15 degrees, about how long someone would have had to be back there, scratching at the walls, leaving those marks in the frost. And I wonder if they made it out, or if I was hauling a corpse across 3 states and nobody told me. The sound stopped after Lexington, right around the time the temperature dropped below 0. I think about that too. If you're still listening, you probably enjoy stories like this. A like or a comment helps keep them alive. I've been driving long haul for 15 years, done every route from the Pacific to the Atlantic. I know my rig inside and out, every sound it makes, every vibration, every shift in weight. So when I picked up that load in Barstow and something felt wrong, I knew it wasn't my imagination. It was July, middle of summer. The Mojave Desert was a furnace, 120 degrees in the shade, heat waves rising off the asphalt in shimmering curtains. I was hauling what should have been a light load. Restaurant equipment headed to Flagstaff. Stainless steel shelving, prep tables, nothing too heavy. The paperwork said 8,000 pounds, but the second I pulled onto Route 40, I knew something was off. The trailer was pulling heavy. Too heavy. The engine was straining more than it should. My rig can handle 80,000 pounds total. This felt like I was pushing 70,000, maybe more. I checked the manifest again at the first rest stop. Definitely said 8,000 pounds of restaurant equipment. But my gut told me different. 15 years on the road teaches you to trust your gut. I kept driving. The desert stretched out on both sides, endless sand and scrub brush and nothing else. The kind of landscape that makes you feel small, alone. About 40 miles out, I hit a way station. Standard DOT checkpoint. I pulled onto the scale. 23,000 pounds total. My truck weighs 8,000 empty. That meant I was hauling 15,000 pounds of cargo, nearly double what the manifest claimed. The attendant waved me through without comment. I wasn't overweight for my rig's capacity. But I sat there at the exit, engine idling, trying to make sense of it. I pulled out my phone and called the shipping company. The dispatcher insisted the load was correct. 8,000 pounds of stainless steel shelving. That's what they loaded. That's what I should be hauling. I asked if maybe they miscounted. He got defensive, told me their scale was calibrated, told me to stop wasting time and make the delivery. I hung up, sat there in the cab, AC blasting, staring at the road ahead. Then I smelled it. Faint at first. Sweet and rotten, like meat left in the sun too long. It was coming through the vents, seeping into the cab despite the recycled air. I gagged, rolled down the windows despite the heat. The smell got stronger. I pulled into a rest area 10 miles up the road, parked in the shade of a dried-up tree that looked like it had been dead for decades. The asphalt shimmered. A lone RV sat at the far end of the lot. I walked around the trailer in the baking heat. The sun was brutal. I could feel it burning through my shirt. The rear doors were sealed with a numbered lock. Same numbers on my paperwork. No tampering, no visible damage. But that smell. It was worse at the back of the trailer. Unmistakable now. Organic. Decomposing. I looked underneath. No leaks. No fluids. Nothing. I got back in the cab. Cranked the AC. Tried to breathe through my mouth. I should have opened those doors. I know that now. But part of me didn't want to. See? Didn't want to know. So I kept driving. The smell intensified as the day wore on, even with the windows up, even with the air recirculating. It seeped in, filled the cab, filled my lungs. I pulled over twice to vomit on the side of the road. The second time, a highway patrol car pulled up behind me. The officer stepped out. A young guy, maybe late 20s, mirrored sunglasses reflecting the desert sun. He asked if I was okay. I told him about the weight discrepancy, about the smell. He walked to the trailer, circled it slowly, then stopped at the rear doors and sniffed. His face changed. Jaw tightened. He pulled his radio and spoke in low tones I couldn't hear. Then he came back and told me to follow him to the next town. We drove for 20 miles, him in front, lights flashing. Me behind, fighting the urge to vomit again. We pulled into a border patrol checkpoint just inside Arizona. Small building, a few agents standing outside, vultures circling overhead in the white-hot sky. The officer gestured for me to park. 3 border patrol agents approached. One of them had bolt cutters. They cut the lock and opened the trailer doors. I stood back, watched from 30 feet away as they climbed inside. The heat coming out of that trailer was unreal. Had to be 150 degrees inside. The smell hit them immediately. One agent gagged, pulled his shirt over his nose. They found the restaurant equipment. Stainless steel shelving, just like the manifest said. But underneath, hidden in false bottom crates. They found packages, hundreds of them, vacuum-sealed, packed in failing coolant containers. Not drugs, organs, human organs, hearts, kidneys, livers, packed in medical-grade coolant that had failed in the heat. Black market transplant operation, the ones that had started decomposing, that was the smell. They pulled me into an interrogation room, asked me questions for 6 hours. Where did I pick up the load? Who hired me? Did I know what I was carrying? I told them everything, showed them the paperwork, the manifests, the emails. I had no idea. The shipping company was a front. The paperwork was forged. The whole thing was a trafficking operation moving stolen organs across state lines. They cleared me eventually, but they impounded my truck as evidence. I didn't get it back for 3 months. By then, I'd sold it. I don't drive commercially anymore. Can't do it, because every time I smell something off, every time a load feels heavier than it should, I think about those packages. Those organs came from people, living people who were murdered, cut apart, sold, and I was carrying them, hauling them across the desert while they rotted in the heat. I keep thinking, what if I hadn't noticed the weight? What if the smell hadn't been so strong? What if I'd just delivered the load like I was supposed to? Would I have been complicit? Would that blood have been on my hands? I still have nightmares about opening those doors myself, about seeing what was inside, about the people those organs belonged to, and wondering if they died screaming. I haul timber in the Pacific Northwest. It's hard work. Remote logging sites, narrow mountain roads, weather that changes by the hour. But the pay's decent, and I like being alone. At least I thought I was alone. I'd been running the same route for 2 years, picking up logs from sites near Mount Baker, hauling them to mills in Bellingham or Seattle. I knew every turnoff, every trailhead, every place to park overnight. I have a flatbed trailer, just rails and straps, completely open. At night, when it's empty, I usually park it at logging roads or trailheads, remote spots where I won't get bothered. About 6 months ago, I started noticing small things. My trailer door would be ajar when I swore I'd locked it. I'd smell cigarette smoke in the morning even though I don't smoke. Muddy footprints on the flatbed that weren't mine. I figured it was kids messing around, or homeless people looking for shelter. Then one morning I found a sleeping bag. It was tucked behind the support rails at the front of the trailer, barely visible unless you were looking for it. Dirty, torn, like it had been used for months. I threw it in a dumpster, made sure to lock up tighter that night. A week later, it happened again. This time I found food wrappers, empty cans, a makeshift camp hidden in the space between the rails. Someone was living in my trailer, using it as shelter when I parked overnight, then disappearing before I came back in the morning. It pissed me off. This is my livelihood, my equipment. I don't need some squatter damaging my rig or getting hurt and suing me. I started checking more carefully, locking everything, parking in different spots, but the signs kept appearing. Then came the night near Mount Baker. I'd picked up a half-load that afternoon, massive old-growth logs, the kind that take 2 men and a crane to load. I was supposed to deliver them in the morning, so I parked on a logging road about 15 miles from the nearest town. No cell service, no lights, just forest and darkness. I slept in my cab like always. The rain was coming down steady, drumming on the roof. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of metal creaking. The trailer was shifting, like someone had climbed onto it. I turned on my exterior lights. Nothing, just rain and darkness, and the trees crowding in on both sides. I grabbed my flashlight and got out. The mud around the trailer was churned up. Fresh footprints leading from the tree line to the flatbed, and between the logs, the massive gaps where the timber was stacked, I saw movement. Someone was hiding in there. "Hey!" I shouted. "Get the hell off my trailer!" No response. I walked closer, shining my light between the logs. I saw a hand, filthy, pulling back into shadow. I said, "Get out! I'm calling the cops." "No signal out here." The voice came from the darkness between the logs. Male, rough, like gravel scraping over concrete. A figure emerged slowly. A man, maybe in his 40s, gaunt, dressed in rags. He was holding a hunting knife. My blood went cold. I backed toward the cab, hand moving to my own knife. I carry one for cutting straps and ropes. The man stepped off the trailer, didn't break eye contact. "I've been riding with you for 3 weeks, he said. 3 weeks. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All those trips, all those miles. He'd been hiding in my cargo, riding along, and I never knew. "You never check behind the straps," he said, almost like he was impressed. I wanted to run, wanted to jump in my cab and drive until I hit pavement and lights and people, but I couldn't move. "What do you want?" I managed to say. He tilted his head, studying me. The knife was still in his hand, blade catching the light. "Just need to get around," he said. "You go to the places I need to be." The logging sites, the remote roads. He was using me to move between camps, between hiding spots. "You need to leave," I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. "Now," he smiled. Not a friendly smile. Something else. Then he backed away. Slowly, still holding the knife, walked backward into the forest, eyes locked on mine until the darkness swallowed him. I didn't wait. I jumped in my cab and drove. 40 miles down that mountain road in the rain, in the dark, until I hit the outskirts of Bellingham, pulled into the first open gas station, lights and people and safety. I called the police, told them everything. They found evidence of a camp near where I'd been parking. Tarps, supplies, a fire pit. He'd been living in those woods for months, riding trailers to move between sites. They never found him. I quit the timber roads, switched to city deliveries. Nothing remote, nothing overnight. But I still wonder about him. Was he just homeless, down on his luck, trying to survive? Or was he planning something, waiting for the right moment? And how many times was I driving down the highway, windows down, music playing, completely unaware, while he was 6 feet behind me, hidden in my cargo, watching? I checked my logs after that, tried to figure out how long he'd really been riding with me. Based on the evidence police found, they think it was closer to 2 months. 2 months. 60 days of me loading and unloading, driving and parking, while someone lived in the shadows of my trailer. I think about that sometimes. Late at night, when I can't sleep. About all the times I walked past him, about how close we were, about what he might have done if I discovered him sooner, or later. My husband Tom and I drive as a team. One sleeps while the other drives. It's efficient, it's profitable, and after 12 years of marriage, we've got it down to a science. But what happened on I-90 that January almost ended everything. We'd picked up a dry van load of electronics in Seattle. Computers, tablets, high-value cargo. Standard run to Minneapolis, about 1,800 miles. It was the second week of January. A massive blizzard was sweeping across the northern route, dumping snow from Montana to Minnesota. The smart thing would have been to wait it out. But we're not smart. We're professionals. We pushed into the storm. Tom was driving the overnight shift. I was sleeping in the bunk behind the cab. Around midnight, somewhere near Missoula, he pulled over at a closed rest stop. The snow was coming down so hard you couldn't see 10 feet ahead. Wind howling, temperature dropping fast. Tom woke me up. Said we needed to chain up before tackling the pass. I pulled on my coat and followed him outside. The cold hit like a physical force. The kind of cold that burns your lungs when you breathe, Tom went to get the chains from the toolbox. I walked to the back of the trailer. Standard security check. Make sure the doors are secure. The seal was broken. That sick feeling hit my stomach immediately. Someone had tampered with our load. I called Tom over, showed him the seal hanging loose, the lock still in place, but the numbered tag snapped. We stood there in the blizzard, snow accumulating on our shoulders, debating what to do. No cell signal. The nearest town was 30 miles back. We couldn't just leave the trailer. There was $200,000 worth of electronics inside. Tom said we should check the cargo, make sure nothing was stolen. I agreed. He opened the doors. Inside, boxes of electronics were stacked on pallets, shrink-wrapped, everything looking intact. We climbed in with our flashlights, checking serial numbers, looking for missing inventory. Then I saw her. Between two pallets, huddled against the wall, wrapped in a heavy coat. A girl, maybe 16 years old, shivering violently, lips blue, barely conscious. "Tom!" We pulled her out of the trailer. She was frozen, literally frozen. Her coat was stiff with ice, her fingers white. We carried her to the cab, cranked the heat, wrapped her in every blanket we had. Tom got on the CB radio, calling for help. Another trucker relayed our message to 911. The girl was coming around, but slowly. Her eyes were unfocused. She couldn't speak at first, just made these horrible gasping sounds. I held her, rubbing her arms, trying to get circulation going. When she could finally talk, she begged us not to call the police. She spoke broken English, accent I couldn't place, Eastern European maybe. Through tears and chattering teeth, she told us her story. She'd crossed the border weeks ago, hidden in a truck coming from Canada. She'd been separated from her family, was trying to get to New York where her uncle supposedly lived. She'd been hopping trailers at loading docks, sneaking in, riding for a few hours, then jumping out at the next stop. She'd climbed into our trailer in Seattle, been inside for 8 hours in sub-zero temperatures. I did the math. When we'd picked up the load, it was cold but not deadly. But as we drove east, as we climbed into the mountains, the temperature had dropped. Inside that unheated trailer, it must have been -20. Maybe colder. If we hadn't stopped to chain up, if we hadn't noticed the broken seal, she would have died. Frozen to death while we drove, completely unaware. Montana State Patrol arrived 45 minutes later. 2 SUVs with chains, lights flashing in the blizzard. They wrapped the girl in heat packs and blankets, put her in an ambulance that had been waiting at the base of the mountain. Tom and I spent the next 3 hours giving statements. The girl had severe frostbite on her fingers and toes, but she'd live. We learned later that she'd escaped from a trafficking ring. She'd been brought over the Canadian border with promises of work, then locked in a house in Vancouver with a dozen other girls. She'd managed to escape, spent weeks making her way south and east, hiding in trucks, trying to reach her family. Federal agents got involved. Our testimony helped them bust a larger operation, but that night haunts me. I keep thinking about all the times we didn't check the seal, all the rest stops where we didn't walk back to the trailer, all the loads we've hauled over 12 years of driving. How many other people have been inside trailers, freezing, dying, calling for help, and nobody knew. We saved her. But how many did we miss? How many have I driven past in parking lots, in loading docks, in rest areas, people trapped in trailers, hoping someone would notice, hoping someone would help? The agents told us we did the right thing, that we saved her life. But I can't shake the guilt, because it was luck. Pure luck that Tom noticed the seal. Pure luck that we stopped when we did. 5 more miles, 1 more hour, and she'd have been a corpse. I think about her sometimes, wonder if she made it to her uncle, if she's safe. But mostly I think about the others, the ones we didn't save, the ones nobody saved. I've been an owner-operator for 20 years, independent hauler. I load my own cargo, maintain my own equipment, make my own schedule. I take pride in my work. When I strap down a load, it stays strapped. When I load a trailer, everything is secure. So when my cargo started moving by itself on I-10 through West Texas, I knew something was impossible was happening. It was a furniture run. Phoenix to Houston. Full trailer of couches, dressers, dining tables. Nice stuff. Expensive stuff. I'd loaded it myself that afternoon with help from the warehouse crew. Professional straps, 4 per piece, all rated for £3,000. Everything secured according to Doty standards. I pulled out around 6 in the evening. The sun was setting over the desert, turning everything blood red and orange. Beautiful and eerie at the same time. The drive through West Texas is brutal. 200 miles of nothing between Van Horn and Fort Stockton. No towns, no gas stations, just highway and desert and darkness. I'd done it 100 times. Around 11 at night, somewhere past Van Horn, I heard a loud crash from the trailer, the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. I cursed. My first thought was a strap had come loose. Bad straps mean damaged furniture, means I don't get paid. But I knew I'd secured everything correctly. I always do. I pulled onto the shoulder. It's dangerous. Pitch black, no lights for miles. Semis blowing past at 80 miles an hour. I grabbed my flashlight and walked to the back. Unlocked the doors, pulled them open. One of the sofas had shifted, fallen off its pallet. It was lying in the middle of the trailer floor. That was impossible. I'd used 4 straps on that sofa. All secured to the wall mounts, all tight. I shined my light on the straps. They were still attached to the mounts, but they were cut. Clean slices through the heavy webbing. My cargo knife was still in my pocket. I checked the other furniture. Everything else was secure. I looked around the trailer. No sign of damage, no sign of anyone breaking in. Just that one sofa and those cut straps. I resecured it with fresh straps from my toolbox. Locked up. Got back on the road. My mind was racing. Someone must have cut those straps at the warehouse. A prank, maybe. Or sabotage. An hour later, another crash. Louder this time. My heart was pounding. This wasn't right. Something was wrong. I pulled over again, grabbed a tire iron along with my flashlight this time. Opened the trailer doors. 3 pieces of furniture had been moved. Not fallen, moved. A dresser was upside down in the aisle between pallets. A dining table was standing on end against the wall. Another sofa had been dragged to the front of the trailer. More straps cut and on the floor. Wet footprints, bare feet, leading from the front of the trailer to where I was standing. But there was no one in the trailer. I swept my flashlight over every inch. It's a 53-foot box. Nowhere to hide. The footprints glistened in the light. Still, wet, fresh. I backed out of the trailer. Slammed the doors. My hands were shaking. My breath was coming in short gasps. This wasn't possible. There was no one in there. I'd checked every corner. There was no way someone could hide. But the footprints were real. The moved furniture was real. I got in my cab, locked all the doors, sat there trying to decide what to do. I was 90 miles from Van Horn. Couldn't abandon the trailer. That's my livelihood, my $150,000 truck. So I drove. I kept the CB radio on, talked to any trucker in range just to hear another human voice. And from the trailer, every few minutes, banging, scraping, the sound of furniture being dragged across the floor. I didn't stop again until I reached Van Horn at 2 in the morning. I pulled into a lit truck stop, parked under the brightest lights I could find. 2 other drivers were there. I asked them to come with me, to witness whatever was in the trailer. We walked to the back together. I unlocked the doors, pulled them open. The furniture was completely rearranged, pieces stacked in impossible configurations. The dresser balanced on top of the dining table, sofas standing upright, everything piled in the center of the trailer like some kind of sculpture. But there was no one inside. The three of us searched every inch. Nothing. No one. The other drivers went quiet. One of them backed away, shaking his head. "Get that thing away from my truck," he said. They both walked off, left me standing there. I called the delivery company, told them what happened. They didn't believe me, said I was high or drunk or making excuses for damaged cargo. I delivered the load the next day. They docked my pay for the damage, refused to pay for the broken straps. I sold my truck 3 months later. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't drive at night without listening for sounds from the trailer. Couldn't haul cargo without checking, double-checking, triple-checking. I know what I saw, what I heard, what happened. Something was in there with me. I don't know what it was. I don't have an explanation. But those footprints were real. That furniture moved on its own. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear it, the scraping, the dragging, the sound of something moving in the darkness. And I wonder, was it in the cargo or was it in the trailer itself? Is it still there, riding with whoever bought my truck? I try not to think about it, but I can't help wondering if the new driver has noticed anything strange yet, or if they're still driving, completely unaware of what they're hauling. The open road is supposed to be freedom, just you and your rig and the endless highway. But your trailer is a black box, 40 feet of enclosed space behind you. You load it, lock it, and trust that what's back there is what's supposed to be there. These drivers learned that trust can be broken, that sometimes you're not alone. Sometimes cargo shifts in ways it shouldn't. Sometimes you hear breathing where there should be silence. Check your trailers, always, because you never know what might be riding along with you. Thanks for listening. If you made it through the darkness, leave a comment about which story got under your skin the most, and stay safe out there.